Shut the fuck up. Someone beeping outside.
Didn't realize you were talking to your computer for a second. I was like, "Oh, okay. Damn."
No, not you, the person outside honking their fucking horn.
Rude.
So standard disclaimer, I guess, is we know not what horrors will come to pass by the time that this is out.
Because this will be in the new year, right?
This will be in the new year, I believe in February.
Oh god. Okay.
Hi, friends. We're coming to you live from after the election.
If you notice a shift in our energy, that's why, cuz oh boy. Gee
How you
whiz.
doing, bestie?
Ah. I partook of some legal substances and made a long Furby. Her name is Ketchup, and she's really giving Be Not Afraid. But yeah, so that's what I did. And there's been a lot of anxiety and crying
Mhm.
and wondering why my mood is so shitty and why I'm not sleeping and not eating.
I mean, I expected this result. Yeah, I'm not doing great on either of those fronts either.
Mm,
I had a very nice bitch sesh with my therapist,
mhm.
who is also a queer person. I had a lovely bitch sesh with a coworker at work.
In a very official manner.
Well, it's so we have open cubicles now.
Disgusting, by
Things
the
got
way.
things got switched around. We used to have closed offices, and now we have open cubicles, and so we can't, like, bitch about things anymore. So, we went to one of the little one-on-one rooms, and we have a system, and I checked in via the system for a 30-minute one-on-one meeting, and we had a very official meeting
Mhm.
in which we just bitched at each other
And my
about
response to that
this.
was, "This is the most significant meeting that that room will ever host."
Almost certainly. Yeah. So, yeah, we're doing spectacular here.
We're gonna keep trying to record our silly little podcast for something to do. These at least are nice chapters to take our brains somewhere else.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to, like, bring back all of this pain up, but part of the podcast is about us reacting to shit, and, we're reacting to shit.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's where we're coming from right now. November, early November 2024, and we're gonna spend the next couple of months making sure we have the paperwork and things that we need to flee the country at a moment's notice or keep ourselves safe or any of that fun stuff. And as I said to my therapist, I really hope that, like, a decade from now, I look back on all of this and go, wow, I was being really paranoid about all of that. It was actually like, shit, but it was fine.
Mhm.
But if I may quote Edna Mode of The Incredibles,
You may.
luck favors the prepared. Well, I don't know, darling, but luck favors the prepared. Didn't know the baby's powers, so I covered the basics.
She's the voice we need in these trying times.
She truly is. And in these unprecedented times.
No, they're precedented, that's the problem. In
Yeah, the
these
problem is they're very precedented.
unprecedented times.
Oh, I wish, please.
If Aragorn, son of Arathorn, wants to just show up and deal with this, he's more than welcome.
I'm still holding out hope, and maybe Apollo's dodgeball is in my hand right now, that he'll just die before January.
Given how careful we are being in using encrypted messaging services to discuss potentially sensitive topics, maybe we shouldn't express our enthusiasm about a potential presidential assassination on the
I'm not
podcast.
saying assassination, I'm saying the
Just
man
death
has a heart attack.
of Nath. Someone's got the death note. They're just, a little scribble
He's
in there.
he's 78.
Yeah,
Like, time will eventually get him, and I wish him the worst.
the fucking same.
You know who I don't wish the worst, and in fact wish the best upon?
Who?
Faramir and Eowyn and their future nuptials.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Fandom Apprentice. From NPR News in Washington, what the actual fuck? Um,
Yeah, I know we have and I promise we will not spend the entire podcast talking about this. We don't really want to talk about it any more than y'all do. But, we have our opinions, we have our stances. We are not a electoral politics analysis podcast. We are
I've
two
dabbled in that in the past.
I'm not surprised because you're very smart and you could do whatever you want. But the point of this bit is I think we will be talking about the state of things as it comes up, but we are also two queer people who are trying to take care of ourselves and our communities. And like you said, get our shit together on a very practical level to make sure that we are safe and okay. So don't get your political news from us, especially
Mhm.
months after the fact. Please don't take whatever we do or don't say on this podcast as a reflection of our full nuanced takes and opinions and the things that we care about. Because sometimes you need to take time to hang out with your bestie and talk about Lord of the Rings to keep yourself sane. And, that doesn't mean that this is the only way that we're spending our time.
No. I mean, I am also a trans person. You are married to a trans person
Hmm.
at a time in the last several months have been just transphobic messaging coming from politicians basically nonstop on both sides of the aisle. There's
Hmm.
already been 2 Democratic politicians who have blamed trans people for Harris's loss,
Jesus Christ.
including a Democratic representative from Massachusetts,
Hmm.
which we both live in proximity to,
Hmm.
which is great fun, y'all. To Sam's point with all of that, we will bring things up as they become relevant. We've always applied pieces of this text to our lives and pieces of our lives to this text. That's part of why we do this podcast. I also was having a conversation with somebody in another Discord server I'm in the other day about allegory versus applicability and what Tolkien says about that, and how, you know, there were, as I was reading through this and looking ahead to some of the chapters in the future, it was like, actually, some of this still remains applicable to our modern electoral politics
Hmm.
and the election of Trump and Vance to the White House. The applicability of a story is what allows it to endure.
Hmm.
And so the fact that we can, for better or worse, reference pieces of what's happening today into this text shows, how much of an enduring tale that it is.
Yeah.
But anyway, while we unfortunately are stuck living with the evil, they've defeated the evil.
Fuck yeah. So bringing it into what is the chapter number? Because I just wrote the chapter title. I didn't write the number.
Chapter 4, The Field of Cormallen.
So we are back into the big fight that's happening. So if you remember, we left off last time with the ring having been destroyed and Sam and Frodo fucking facing the end of all things. So we're back at the battle. Aragorn is under his banner. Gandalf is on the hilltop. And Gandalf is the one who shouted, "The eagles are coming," back when I think it was Pippin heard that before fucking passing out. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the eagles are actually coming, which we were totally led to believe was just a drifting into unconsciousness, strange little dream. But no, the eagles are coming, which is amazing. And they all appear, and the Nazgul turn tail and run, but they're not running because of the eagles. But that's okay. They're leaving. It's fine. And this is sort of the vibe that we're beginning the chapter with.
Yes. I was saying it's in my notes, it's really nice that we did not have to wait as long to go back to our other people this time,
Hmm.
because like, I miss them. They're fun. They're fun to
Yeah.
be around. I miss Legolas and Gimli and even Gandy Boy here. But yes, the Eagles are coming. The Eagles are coming to save the day once again, and we're introduced to Gwaihir the Windlord and Landroval, his brother.
Hmm.
These fuckers are ancient.
Like how ancient?
So it's said they're the greatest of the descendants of old Thorondor. But with Thorondor, they helped rescue Beren and Luthien, who were imprisoned in Angband during the First Age.
Oh, shit. Okay.
So like 6 to 7,000 years ish.
Damn. All right.
Also, would you like to guess what Gwahir's name means?
Does it mean giant eagle?
No, it's close,
King
but
eagle.
it means Windlord.
Oh my fucking God.
And so we have Windlord the Windlord
Nice. All right.
showing up at, and I just want to know who let fucking Moon rule the Eagles. These beings out of thousands of years of myths and legends, and it's just Moon.
Yeah. Love it.
Landroval means Broadwing, just for
Well, that seems, I mean, they're both fine names. It's just the
Mhm.
repetition that's
Yes.
really getting me. But anyway, so they're all watching everything crumbling like we talked about Sam and Frodo seeing before. And then I wrote down a quote about what they're perceiving in the big black cloud of doom. And as the captains gazed south to the land of Mordor, it seemed to them that, black against the pall of cloud, there rose a huge shape of shadow, impenetrable, lightning crowned, filling all the sky. Enormous, it reared above the world and stretched out towards them a vast, threatening hand, terrible but impotent, for even as it leaned over them, a great wind took it, and it was all blown away and passed, and then a hush fell. So that's, I assume, is, I don't know, Sauron's essence, spirit, presence, something sort of showing up and then dissipating. It was a very cool image.
Mhm. Thinking about that now, I think of, like, D&D vampires who, if you kill them, technically they're supposed to dissolve into mist and go back to their lair to regenerate,
Mhm.
unless you hit them with fire, radiant, or sunlight. And so there was the vampire that I set our party against when I was DMing,
Mhm.
and was it Thea who'd thrown up daylight, or was it Rosemary?
Rosemary.
So
This is
our
our
druid
druid.
had thrown up daylight, and so, of course, the mist starts to escape and then is just, unfortunately, in the middle of a sphere of daylight. Or no, because it he died in the middle of sickening radiance, which, like, casts sort of a dark pall. So I felt like it was
Yeah.
like that was blocking the daylight, but then it went out of the sphere of sickening radiance into the daylight
Like, surprise, bitch.
and just whoo away,
Mhm.
which was very Critical Role of us, I guess. There's a small
Was that a
fruit fly
Vox Machina
buzzing.
thing? Because I did not deal with the Briarwoods at all.
Yeah, there was the Briarwood arc. Spoilers for a 6-year-old campaign, I guess, and a 3-year-old animated show?
My work brain is just like the campaign is in the first grade and the animated show is in preschool.
Honestly, it might even be older than that. When Silas Briarwood, who is a vampire, dies, at the ziggurat under Whitestone, he dissolves into mist and starts to go away, and then I can't remember whether it's Pike or Keyleth, I think it's Keyleth, just hits him with a bolt of daylight. I think she casts, like, the 6th level sunbeam spell and just hits him with it
Love it.
and just dissolves the fucker,
I love it.
which is fantastic. And then there's a similar they adapted that for the animated series as well, which is a very cool scene. But that's the vibe I'm getting is, like, he's trying to flee, but just doesn't have the energy to do it.
Mhm.
And as soon as he's emerging, trying to form some form in the mortal world, he just can't, and he just dissolves.
He just exists as a bad vibe. Because I think it was Gandalf talking about that before, about how he can't ever really totally be gone forever, but he can effectively be rendered impotent. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Mhm, mhm. His sort of latent evil just kind of scattering into the wind.
Mhm.
Um,
And the armies, speaking of evil scattering, the remaining evil armies scatter. Some take their own lives, some hide, most of them just flee. There's some that had really been in Sauron's service the longest who try to rally for a last battle, but they get wiped out pretty quickly. And Gandalf asks Gwaihir to carry him one last time and basically apologizing for the inconvenience of saying, I'm sorry, man. I keep asking you to do this, but it's just one more time. I promise that I'll stop asking you to carry me. But then he says, I would bear you, answered Gwaihir, whither you will, even were you made of stone. And it's just nice to see a little moment that I guess they're friends or they at least have a deep mutual respect. And that was a cute little character moment.
one of the things that I noticed about Gandalf's last request, so he's referring to, Gwaihir carrying him twice before,
Mhm,
once from Orthanc, and once from Xirax-Agil, which this was interesting to me, the choice of the dwarven name here. Xirax-Agil is one of the 3 peaks above Moria,
mhm,
where Gandalf died and was reborn. It's also called Celebdil in Elvish and Silvertine in Westron. And we've noted before that both Gandalf and Galadriel seem to purposefully use Dwarvish, but mostly when they're talking with Gimli, because
mhm.
everyone else just kind of defaults to the Sindarin names
Yeah.
or the Western names if they're talking with the hobbits too. But I thought it was interesting here the choice of the dwarven name,
Mhm,
because Gandalf typically does default to the Sindarin names. I don't really have anything like reading further into this because Gimli's not standing right there,
but it's
but
interesting
it,
to
it
note.
was, yeah, it was just something I picked up on.
Yeah. Another thing that I picked up on was just thinking about the Eagles in general. I wonder how Bilbo is doing in this moment. And I really wish that we could see how he's feeling and if he is also sensing the ring's destruction, which he has to be. And
He has to be.
I hope that we'll see him again before the end of this because I need to know just what this moment is like for him. But we don't get to know that right now, but I was thinking about it.
Before we get before they pick them up and fly off, Gwyer says, "The north wind blows, but we shall outfly it." And I thought back to the last time we talked about the north wind in sort of an allegorical sense,
Mhm.
or in a literal sense, but that was at Boromir's death. So I was trying to look up like mythology on the north wind in Middle Earth. I was finding mostly like Greek mythology and finding things about Boreas. But the only other lines that we have in this book are from the Lament for Boromir back in Two Towers. From the gate of kings the north wind rides, and past the roaring falls, and clear and cold about the tower its loud horn calls. What news from the north, O mighty wind, do you bring to me today? What news of Boromir the bold? For he is long away. And throughout the previous verses of the lament, too, because it starts off west wind, south wind, north wind.
Mhm.
And both the wind and the south wind say that the north wind most likely has news because that's where Boromir was last seen.
Mhm.
That doesn't tell us a whole lot about how the north wind was perceived, but I just thought it was interesting that we have, again, sort of another reference to the winds in a sort of personified manner.
Yeah. And after that discussion about the wind and Guahir picking Gandalf up to carry him to Mount Doom, we switch back to Sam and Frodo. Frodo, in his typical emo fashion, especially now with the quest complete, he is just resigned to his imminent death. But Sam is less so. And Sam insists that if they're going to die, they should at least move a little further away from the thing literally named the Crack of Doom. And Frodo does indulge him and they sort of scoot a little bit. But there's really nowhere for them to go. They're just kind of waiting to be engulfed by fire, sitting under a rain of hot ash, totally alone. And Sam is holding Frodo's hand and trying to cheer him up, talking about what a great tale they've been in and how he wishes he could hear someone tell the story of nine-fingered Frodo in the Ring of Doom. And while this is happening, Gwahir spots them, but not before they collapse. And I have a quote about that,
Mhm.
but if you had more things before the quote, by all means.
I also think it's fun because Sam references to, like, "We'd be a great story like the tale of Baron One Hand and the Great Jewel."
Mhm.
And then Gwahir shows up, a character in that story.
Oh, shit! Yeah, you're right!
And it goes back to Sam and Frodo having that conversation. I wanna say it's in Of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit,
Yes, I think it was.
about being part of those same old stories.
Mhm.
They've never really left the story, it's just continued on with new characters, and they're a
Yeah.
part of the same tale.
Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
And what Gwahir sees, the sort of picture, is two small dark figures, forlorn, hand in hand upon a little hill, while the world shook under them and gasped, and rivers of fire drew near. And even as he espied them and came swooping down, he saw them fall, worn out, or choked with fumes and heat, or stricken down by despair at last, hiding their eyes from death. So, this is not a great heroic end for them, quote unquote end. Obviously, the spoilers, they live, but they are just completely worn down. They have given absolutely everything to the quest, and there's nothing left that they can do. And it's just, it's pathetic. It's sad. It reminds you how small they are, especially the line hand in hand upon a little hill. I assume literally it's just a small hill at the base of the mountain. But I do kind of like the idea of thinking about Mount Doom as a little hill because we know it's not objectively that big of a mountain. And sort of putting the whole thing in perspective that it's just this one little thing happening in this one place. And it's all consuming to us and it's all consuming to the story. But ultimately, the rest of the world is going to keep going on whether or not Sam and Frodo ever get up again.
Well, now I feel really bad about the little joke that I was gonna make here, which
Oh
was
no! What was your joke?
because that was very deep and insightful and very, like, but I was going to say that, like, they're married. I don't care what anyone else says. This is marriage.
Hmm.
By the power vested in me by the Universal Life Church, I declare them hobbit husbands.
Hell yeah. I mean, I recently got an email congratulating me for my ninth year of service to the Universal Life Church. So I second stamp validate that. Absolutely.
If anybody would like us to do their wedding,
Oh my God.
I'd be delighted. It's probably best if you're not looking for anything super solemn.
No, no, this
I
is.
will start with "Marriage is what brings us together today," if you would like me to. But anyway.
I mean, speaking of marriage,
Uh-huh.
they wake up in, is it pronounced Athelion? I haven't had to say it in a while.
Ithilien, yeah.
Athelion, yes. So they wake up and it's nice, it's sunny, there's a little breeze and some leaves, and Sam thinks that everything that just happened was a dream, but then sees Frodo laying next to him and his hand on top of the blanket, minus one finger, and realizes that it was all real. And there's so much happening, but the most important thing is they are tucked into the same bed because they're married.
Uh-huh, so, I mean, there's 2 wonderful things here,
Mhm.
or a couple of wonderful things here is
So many, yes.
the thing that wakes Sam up, and the first thing that he notices is the scent,
Mhm.
the fragrance of Ithilien. Scent memory is so incredibly powerful. It is one of the most powerful forms of memory we have. It's also typically less strong when you're sleeping, and so it makes sense that, like, when he wakes up, it's one of the first things he notices.
Mhm.
He's obviously in bed with Frodo because they're married. Frodo is now a member of the Assassin's Brotherhood prior to 1191, because he's missing his ring finger.
Oh, is that a thing?
In Assassin's Creed, which I have played many, many of the Assassin's Creed games. I've not played all of them, but most of them.
And for our listeners, I have not played them, but you have sent me so many screenshots that I am deeply invested in the stories of the games you have played. So I've basically experienced them. I've gotten them with your commentary, which is even better.
It's I have sent you screenshots specifically of the ones where you can be a lesbian,
And that's beautiful.
and I mean, who doesn't want to be a hot Viking warrior or a hot Greek mercenary just fucking their way through, uh, England? Listen, some people get pierced with a sword, other people get pierced with the
With a, psychedelic staff. Anyway.
Anyway, the other thing is it's sort of implied in a few lines that not only are they tucked in bed together, that they are not clothed, because
Oh,
their
yeah.
clothes are clean and in the corner, and they're not wearing anything else. So they are naked in bed with each other, just
Just
fully just dicks out in Athelion.
that would be a really good t-shirt, Ticks Out in a Billion. But, just casual platonic gardener things that everyone just does with their buds. And granted, this is not the first time that they have canonically been naked in the same place, but it's different when they're in a bed. Come on. It's right there. It's on the page. What do you want? But slightly ruining the mood is Gandalf just hovering over them. Imagine you're just bed
He makes a fucking Gandalf entrance.
in bed with naked with your hobbit husband, just enjoying your moment of peace together. You're alive, everything is okay, and then Gandalf is there.
Which they don't know that Gandalf is alive.
Oh, yeah, surprise!
Surprise Gandalf, extra surprise Gandalf.
It's like that meme that's the myth of consensual sex, isn't there someone you forgot to ask?
Surprise Gandalf.
It's gonna be on the socials for this one. But, yeah, he's there, he's asking Sam how he feels, and I have quotes, but I've already read a lot of quotes. Do you want any of the quotes?
I don't actually have quotes for this part.
That's totally fine. Then I'll just read it. Yes, he's asking Sam how he feels. "How do I feel?" he cried. "Well, I don't know how to say it. I feel," he waved his arms in the air. "I feel like spring after winter and sun on the leaves and like trumpets and harps and all the songs I've ever heard." He stopped and turned towards his master. "But how's Mr. Frodo?" he said. "Isn't it a shame about his poor hand? But I hope he's all right otherwise. He's had a cruel time." "Yes, I am all right otherwise," said Frodo, sitting up and laughing in his turn. "I fell asleep waiting for you, Sam, you sleepy head. I was awake early this morning, and now it must be nearly noon." So, so much. First of all, joy. Again, we're feeling joy. Trumpets and harps and all of beauty of songs that he's ever heard. Love it. But second of all, Frodo calls Sam a sleepyhead. And again, that is not something that you say to your gardener when you wake up naked in bed with him, if that's just normal gardener things. That is a term of affection and endearment, and it's so sweet, and I'm glad that they're just having a nice time for once in this fucking book. Feel really strongly about it.
I'm glad.
I just spilled water all down my shirt again.
Sam is developing a drinking problem from this book.
The problem that I can't fucking get water into my mouth.
I know this This is probably a movie that is far too old for most of our listeners. But have you ever seen Airplane?
I have not. I'm aware of it, but I have not watched it.
There's a running bit about how the main character developed a drinking problem from his time in the war.
Mhm.
What war? It's never really defined. But whenever he references the drinking problem, it's usually he has water and it's just like he just splashes it on his face
Oh, no.
rather than drinking from the cup.
Mhm.
So he has a problem drinking, not with alcohol.
Yeah.
And ever since then, ever since watching that movie as like a 15-year-old, whenever I spill water on myself, I think about having a drinking problem. The King of Gondor and Lord of the Western Lands would like to see the hobbits.
Mhm.
It's not yet defined who the King of Gondor and Lord of the Western Lands is. We know. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, we know. But the hobbits are kind of like, huh, interesting. What the fuck?
Yeah, king? Who? Alright, that's fine, I guess.
Yeah, what king and who is he? Said Sam. The King of Gondor and Lord of the Western Lands, said Gandalf, and he has taken back his ancient realm. They get dressed and they are informed, by the way, that it is early April. The ring was destroyed at the end of March. So, just for context, because we've been sort of keeping track of time,
Mhm.
Frodo left the Shire in September. He arrived in Rivendell a month later in late October. And then he stayed in Rivendell from October to December. And then the party set out December 25th. So it's been not quite 4 months.
Damn, that's not very long.
That is a lot of shit to happen in not quite 4 months.
Yeah. Jeez.
That's not quite, but like almost the time from us recording this to when this podcast episode will release.
Oh my god.
It's like 3 months.
I was gonna say we have the nice little note that in Gondor the new year will always be on March 25th when Sauron fell, which is just a nice little their calendar has changed forever.
It's fun. And they come across people who bow down to them and cheer them on. And this is presented as a poem or a song in the text, but I think it's sort of just meant to be like the various calls they're hearing because it's both in Western and in Elvish or in Sindarin.
Mhm.
And just to translate the various Sindarin, because we were presented with "Long live the halflings, praise them with great praise," and then "Koyor I ferian anan, aglarni ferianath," which just means "Long live the halflings, glory to the halflings." And then we have Dor e Berhel Conan and Anun Eglerio, which is Frodo and Sam, princes of the West, glory to them. And the next Elvish bits are Alaitate, Andave Laitu Valmet, Korma Kolindor a Laita Tariena, which just means bless them, long will we praise them. The the ring bearers, bless them to the heights.
Oh.
So it's roughly all variations on the same theme. So I think this is
Mhm.
just like people shouting out at them as they're passing by.
Yeah, it's a montage.
Mhm, mhm. They come to the clearing eventually, where who do they find but Strider?
Yeah, looking amazing and majestic on his throne, and the hobbits, ever unconcerned with authority, just run up to go say hi to him.
I love that to all the hobbits because we had this with Pippin in the last section. I love that he will always just be Strider to them.
Yeah.
No matter how much of Middle Earth he's ruling, he's always just going to be Strider.
Yeah. And Frodo, it's not really clear to me if it's Frodo or Sam who's saying this, but they're basically going, "Oh my god, it's Strider." Oh no, it's Sam, because then immediately he responds with, "Yes, Sam, Strider," said Aragorn. "It is a long way, is it not, from Bree, where you did not like the look of me? A long way for us all, but yours has been the darkest road." And I like that even in this moment, he's just you give him a little bit of a light ribbing, saying, Now
Mhm.
will you tolerate me? Have I proven myself to you, Sam?"
And Strider, there's like thrones carved out of turf here, and Strider puts them on the throne.
Yeah, and specifically because there's his big throne and then there's one on either side, but he puts them on his big throne specifically, I think, in the text. And
Mhm.
I was fucking losing my mind that it was just, there's so many in this chapter and in the next one, really kind and thoughtful gestures that Aragorn does to fully recognize everyone who's helped him get to this point besides Baragon. We'll fucking talk about Baragon, because I'm not at justice for Baragon, but everyone else, he really goes to great lengths to demonstrate that he did not achieve this alone. And there's out there on the fucking throne. It's wonderful.
And, calls them to be praised, and a minstrel comes forward to tell the whole story in Elvish and Western for the whole afternoon.
Mhm. And
It talks about how, like, the
specifically,
light changes.
the title of the story is Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom, and Sam just loses his mind with delight because this is
Mhm.
all he wanted. And I really liked the way that their reaction to this was described. And it's talking about how he was singing until their hearts, wounded with sweet words, overflowed, and their joy was like swords, and they passed in thought out to regions where pain and delight flow together, and tears are the very wine of blessedness. And I think that's just the perfect way to describe how they must feel in this moment of joy being like swords, and the pain and the beauty of it at the same time. And not just the pain of reliving their difficult experiences, but the pain of feeling joy, which is a very difficult thing to articulate. I don't think that I could put it into words better than Tolkien does, but I feel like I understood what he was trying to get at there.
Right, it's the sort of feeling bad at feeling happiness when so many things around you have been so terrible.
Mhm.
And also just when you haven't felt joy for so long and finally it comes back.
Mhm.
It's an unfamiliar feeling, and there is very little line between what is pain and what is pleasure in both physical sensation and in emotional sensations too within the brain.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's really interesting to see those melded together in this kind of language here.
And then, so after the story is done being told, Frodo and Sam get taken back to another little auxiliary area, and they get given some clean clothes and their elven cloak and mithril shirt and sting. And it's also mentioned earlier that Gandalf found the vial of Galadriel in Sam's little box of earth, which was really wonderful, and I'm glad that that got preserved. And so they're getting all of their stuff back, and Frodo says that he doesn't want to wear a sword anymore, which is understandable, and insists that Sam have it, but then Sam insists back. And was this the bit that you had commentary on?
This rankled me a bit.
Yeah.
But so first off, Gandalf somehow found the mithril coat and the Lorien cloak because these were taken by Shagrat,
Mhm.
or not Shagrat, by Snaga,
Mhm.
and dashed off somewhere into the wastes of Mordor. Gandalf has found them somewhere. But the idea of Frodo not wanting to carry a sword and then being convinced to, as if like that's some sort of expectation that he must carry this blade. I think Frodo was I think one, he's perfectly justified in not wanting to carry a tool of violence. I also think him not showing up with a sword makes a really powerful statement of the cycle of violence, the cycle of pain, the cycle of destruction has been ended by my hand, and I will not have any part in taking up the trappings of it ever again.
And now, also, this is, I'm going to put a pin in that too for the next chapter, and another character's relationship to the cycle of violence that I was not totally happy with. But
They get like silver crowns on their heads,
mhm.
and they go to dinner and they see these two like young looking pages serving Aemir and Aragorn, and it's Perry and Mippin, and they promise to tell each other's stories, but They're like, "Well, we have jobs to do first. We'll get to that after dinner."
Mhm. And then Frodo and Sam just sit under the fluttering leaves, probably holding hands, definitely holding hands. And they just get to hang out with Merry and Pippin, and Legolas and Gimli come to join them. And we find out that Merry and Pippin have grown 3 inches because they drank the end draft.
So, I was reading this section, I was listening to the Avatar soundtrack while I was
Ooh.
reading this earlier today, and was listening to as they're sitting under the tree with the leaves falling down, listening to, I think it's "Into a Nighttime Sky," and we'll put a little clip in here behind. So they're sitting, and I'm just, as you're saying, imagining the leaves drifting down and the relief that has to be filling all of them at finally being all back together.
Mhm.
And that was just a really, like, wonderful piece of music to underscore that.
Yeah.
And, Howard Shore does a absolutely spectacular job scoring the films. But I did really enjoy scoring my reading of this with Jeremy Zuckerman.
Yeah.
Also, it did say that when they go off to tell stories and catch each other up on everything, first off, it's Merry and Pippin and Frodo and Sam just chilling, just the hobbits. And
Mhm.
then eventually Gimli and Legolas show up. It's after a while, Legolas and Gimli join them because they snuck away to have a quickie after dinner.
Of course. Yeah.
Obviously. Like that's the only explanation here.
It's on the one hand, they're obviously extremely happy that Sam and Frodo are recovered and they can catch up and they can spend time together, but also now their social calendar is a little more full and they're gonna have a little less time alone, and they go, "Oh, shit, okay, let's just make the most of this couple of minutes." The hobbits can talk for a long time, it will probably be good, but, let's make it quick.
Well, and they're no longer facing imminent death and destruction either.
Mhm.
And so, that brings out feelings in people.
Oh, I'm sure. Sure it does.
Mhm.
But they all have their wonderful little reunion, and then Gandalf shows up and tells everyone they have to go to bed. Very mom at the sleepover, and everyone is fucking exhausted, and Gimli, my favorite boy, because I haven't gotten to talk about Gimli lately, because we've been focused on important world-changing stakes or something, but rest assured I am still a Gimli girly. And so they're talking about, going to EP time. "And not only Sam and Frodo here," said Gimli, "but you too, Pippin. I love you, if only because of the pains you have cost me, which I shall never forget. Nor shall I forget finding you on the hill of the last battle. But for Gimli the dwarf, you would have been lost then. But at least I know now the look of a hobbit's foot, though all that can be seen is under a heap of bodies. And when I heaved that great carcass off you, I made sure you were dead. I could have torn out my beard, and it is only a day yet since you were first up and abroad again. To bed you now go, and so shall I." So good. It's like, "Listen,
Just,
you
I dragged your
motherfucker.
fucking ass out of a heap of bodies on the battlefield. You are not going to die on my watch now."
I was so fucking sure that you were dead, but you were not dead, and now you're alive, and so you're gonna go to sleep, and I'm gonna go to sleep."
I have chased your ass along the width and breadth of Rohan, and now to the fucking Black Gate itself.
He's tired, and then
When
Legolas just frolics off and sings about the sea.
uh-huh, uh-huh. Cleanup crews are delving into Mordor to destroy the last of the northern fortresses and mop up any last resistance. Legolas also sort of like prophecies that he's going to eventually bring elves down to Ithilien,
Mhm,
and they're going to dwell there for a little time before they finally go to Valinor across the sea.
mhm,
But anyway, they all, after several days, they gather themselves and they head down the river. They sail down to Osgiliath and then march to the gates of Minas Tirith. And by now, it is the evening before May. It is the last day of April, which means Aragorn will enter the city on the dawn of May 1st, which
mhm.
is also Beltane, the start of summer, May Day, International Workers' Day. Unfortunately, he's not a worker, he is the state.
Mm. It's Jonathan Colton, 1st of May.
Outdoor fucking starts today.
I was saying the other day, I think that would be a good karaoke song, but I don't know how many karaoke places would have it just because I think it's a little bit niche, but
It's definitely a little bit niche, but
but it would be so fun.
oh, that is such a fantastic karaoke piece. I will stick a clip.
'Cause it's the first of May, outdoor fucking starts today. So bring your favorite lady, or at least your favorite thing.
Anyway, that brings us to the end of chapter 4. Anything else we want to discuss before delving into chapter 5, The Steward and the King?
No, chapter 5 is really nice and I want to talk about it.
So we go back in time a few days. Hey, we go back in time again. Hey.
Yeah.
We've been traveling in sort of the same time period for a little while. But now we go back to the city of Gondor shortly after the captains and the last host of the West marched to Mordor. There's a lot of talk, interestingly, in this chapter and the last chapter about clothing and bandages made of linen.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask if you had any commentary on it.
Not specifically. I feel a little ashamed that I didn't notice. There was a lot of talk of really exciting, extravagant clothing, so I was paying more attention to that. But linen, I think, it has in the Western world associations with burial. It's a very sort of light and breezy fabric. So there's sort of like a lightness after all of the heaviness. There's also this sort of death, rebirth vibe. But yeah, nothing really specific. I'm a big fan of linen. I really love linen. And I could go off on a tangent about how the Industrial Revolution and the transatlantic slave trade are connected to the Western world's shift from more linen-based textile culture to cotton-based textile culture, and how linen is actually better than cotton for a lot of the purposes we use cotton for, but we don't have time for that, and I don't have enough
Go
sources.
off. Go off, girl.
Okay, so just a little bit because I don't have sources to cite in front of me, and I want to represent this topic well. But linen is a phenomenal fabric, and it's something that you can fully grow and harvest in sustainable amounts for a family on your own land, basically. It is time consuming. It takes a long time, but it's flax, it's grass, and it's fairly straightforward to grow and it can be processed. And because of the way that linen fibers are made, it's the inner woody stalk of the flax plant. So you grow the flax, you cut it down with a scythe, and it's these long reed grass things, right? And there's fibers that go from the top to the bottom. And when you're spinning fabric, when you're spinning thread, I should say, long fibers are good because they're really strong. So you're twisting a lot of long pieces together as opposed to a lot of very short cotton fibers are super short. They're, maybe 2 or 3 inches each, whereas a linen fiber can be several inches to several feet. And so see super long, strong fibers, and you take the cut linen stalks and submerge them in water. Sometimes it'll be in a running stream if you have a stream on your property, or it can just be in standing water. And you let the outer sort of fleshy plant material completely rot away. And so anything that can rot on the plant has rotted, and you're left with just this super durable, rot resistant, mold resistant, water resistant fiber, which is also why it's used a lot in burial shrouds and in bandages and things because it's really clean. There's not going to be anything gross that like grows on it really. And it can be spun by hand, it can be woven by hand, it's really durable. It gets softer the more that you wash it. It has moisture wicking and temperature regulating properties, and it's also just really beautiful. I love the look of linen things, and it can all be done sustainably on a very small individual scale. Whereas it's a lot harder to get that same return with cotton. Cotton really incentivizes using large amounts of land and large amounts of labor because it's so much more difficult to process. And cotton does have some other advantages in terms of it's easier to print patterns on cotton and it is better suited for some purposes. But I really we could have more linen in the world and we don't. And now it's this expensive niche textile when it used to be much more common in Western clothing. But that's basically all I have to say about linen. That's not really related to the book at all, but I'm very passionate about it. I'm working on a linen knitting project right now.
Do we have to grow flax on the commune?
Please. I'll take care of it.
I'm down. I'm down.
I'll take care of it and the chickens and the wood-fired pizza oven.
If I get a linen shirt out of it, I'll be down.
I'll make you a linen shirt. It'll be beautiful. Fucking brain cell. Listen, I'll make you anything you want all the time.
Anyway, I just noticed there was some commentary about linen and clothing in the last chapter, and then about the linen bandage, the linen
Mhm.
sling that Eowyn's arm is
Yeah.
in. And I wanted to ask you about it because you're our resident Stitch Witch.
Yeah, linen is good for medical stuff, especially, if you don't have disposable sterile bandages. Linen's pretty great.
So Eowyn refuses to lie in bed. She's antsy. She gets up and she goes to argue with the warden of the Houses of Healing.
Mhm.
And the term warden made me think of prisons, of course.
Yes.
So I went to look up where warden comes from. It comes from Old French, meaning one who guards.
Okay.
And there were a couple of lines throughout this chapter. Faramir refers to himself as also a prisoner of the warden.
Mhm.
And like, so I started to think about, to what extent is the warden a a prison guard? To what extent is the Houses of Healing a carceral system where one is
Mm.
involuntarily committed? Can you leave AMA? Like, can you sign an against medical advice waiver and leave? Towards the end of the chapter, where when Eowyn leaves the care of the House of Healing, the warden is like, she's yours now. I sign her over to your care.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, so that feels weird to me.
Yeah. There's a lot of complex vibes with the stuff that goes down with Eowyn in this chapter. There's a lot.
But the warden also expresses his distaste with the idea of healers who hold any sort of swords or engage in any sort of battle. So like he's some sort of chief of surgery more than he is like an administrator. Like it's kind of a weird vibe. It was an interesting word for Tolkien to choose.
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult to map his role onto any contemporary medical position.
Mhm.
But like you said, Eowyn has her women. We have a vague mention of other women, which is always great. Bring her clothes because she's fucking sick of laying around. She's asking for news of the war, but there is no news. And just the mood overall is really grim because nobody knows what's happening. The sunlight is back and the weather is nice, but it just kind of seems to be mocking everyone's sadness. And the light is throwing into sharp relief how much everything fucking sucks. Denethor's dead. Theoden's dead. The new king, whoever that is fucked off to go fight, and everyone's just sort of left trying to figure out what's next. And so Eowyn asks the warden to bring her to see Faramir, and the warden is not totally sure, but does it anyway, and sort of says, "Here's Eowyn. She wanted to see you because she's not happy here." And then Eowyn puts him in his place a little bit. She says, "Do not misunderstand him, lord," said Eowyn. "It is not lack of care that grieves me. No houses could be fairer for those who desire to be healed. But I cannot lie in sloth, idle, caged. I look for death in battle, but I have not died, and battle still goes on." So this is like exactly what you were saying about them being sort of prisoners. She's feeling trapped here. And, the quality of the medical care is fine, but that's not what I want. I have no desire to be healed and cured. I just want to go out and fight. She's a fucking jock, and I love that for her.
Well, and literally Faramir goes, I also am a prisoner of the healers.
Mhm.
So, and then he says, he looked at her, and being a man whom pity deeply stirred, and now looking at that, knowing what comes a few pages later, where she talks about not wanting anyone's pity,
Mhm.
and it's pity that inspires him to look upon her and feel her grief and start to fall in love with her. Interesting.
Yeah. He's, looking at her and feeling bad. Oh, she's a young lady and she's bummed out and she's pretty, I guess. And so he's asking her what he can do for her, basically saying, "What is within my power to do for you?" And she's bummed that her window doesn't face eastward, not so much literally as metaphorically. That, I don't think the problem is she doesn't like her room. It's because the action is happening to the east and she can't see and she has no news about what's going on.
Mhm.
And they talk about it a little bit. And then she asks if there's anything she can do for him. And she says, "How should I ease your care, my lord?" she said. "And I do not desire the speech of living men." And that line was interesting to me. I wasn't totally sure what she meant, but I just took it to mean that normally she just doesn't want men to talk, but in this case, she'll hear what he has to say. But I didn't really know what she meant by that.
So, I think it connects with her desire for death and battle,
Mhm.
and like, her desire to constantly be fighting.
Yeah.
In many ways, to her mind, going off to battle is tantamount to death. She was not expecting to survive the charge at the Pelennor Fields. She has not been expecting to survive this entire time.
Mhm.
And so, that speech of living men thing is, I think, she doesn't wanna talk to anyone who's not fighting.
Mhm. I like that.
She The only thing that she wants to be doing right now is fight. She has a job that she feels like she needs to be doing, and she's being actively prevented from doing it by her injuries and by the fact that she is stuck in the house of healing.
Mhm.
And I was sort of thinking, like, why does she seek death so much? Why is she searching for Valhalla through all of this? And Faramir will comment on this in a few pages too. But I think she Eowyn is trying desperately to be as valuable to her people as she sees her brother and her uncle being.
Mhm.
And in this case, at this time, that value is on the battlefield.
Mhm.
She is a shield maiden, she is a warrior, she has that soul, um, and yet by the fact that she's a woman, she's kept back from that. And then also I think too, much like Theoden leading from the front, because he had spent so much time being poisoned by Wormtongue, it's been commented on that she also was present for all of Wormtongue's influence.
Mhm.
And so I think she also feels like she has to redeem herself somehow.
Yeah.
And again, that redemption is coming through blood.
Yeah, as this conversation continues and she's asking him what he wants from her, there's unexpected flirtation. I did not have Eowyn and Faramir on my bingo card for this book, and I'm here for it. And I also like the way that their relationship progresses over just the course of a couple of pages because he basically says to her that she's so beautiful, more than all of the flowers and fair maidens in his country, and she's so great, and the world might end in a couple of days, but I would love to be able to see you while we're all still alive. Because also they've both experienced the same highly traumatic events. So for you and I have both passed under the wings of shadow and the same hand drew us back. We've both barely scraped by through these very intense near death experiences and we're kind of the only ones who can understand what we've been through. And but he's giving her this kind of flowery speech and she softly turns him down. "Alas, not me, lord," she said. "Shadow lies on me still. Look not to me for healing. I am a shield maiden, and my hand is ungentle. But I thank you for this at least, that I need not keep to my chamber. I will walk abroad by the grace of the steward of the city." So, better luck next time, pal. But yeah, I had more things to say and then I forgot, but I enjoyed that exchange.
Well, and Faramir ends up being like, "Who the fuck is this mystery woman?" and goes and talks to Mary about her and to the
Mhm.
warden, and then starts, like, stalking her on the walls. And they start, like, walking together in silence, and after 5 days of walking together in silence, she seeks him out instead.
I like that our notes for this section were very different because you say he's stalking her, and I write, Faramir and Eowyn start hanging out and they're helping each other heal, which is very sweet. But I think we had two different angles. Also, because this was my first time, this is the first impression fandom apprentice journey. I had no idea that this was going to happen. So I was just busy being dazzled by some grand romance. And then you're like, actually, he's being a little weird. But yeah, she does eventually come and find him.
I mean, for context, listeners, I'm Demi. The very quick, "Oh my god, you're beautiful," like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't feel that ever,
Mhm.
and so whenever the love at first sight shit happens, or you look at someone and it's like, "Wow, I'd fuck them," and I'm like, "Okay, cool, I don't understand."
Mhm.
Um, I don't know them.
Yeah.
So, for all the jokes that I make about banging Faramir and all 300 of his men on this podcast, like, laying eyes on Faramir and 300 of his men, I'd be like, "Alright, cool, let's make some herbs and stewed rabbit." So, this is kind of deeply strange to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't have too much more commentary than that on it. But I do like the sort of, like I have gotten before I meet someone and I'm like, "Wow, I wanna get to know you better." Like,
Mhm.
I refer to it as, like, the friend crush,
Yeah.
right? And I have had people that I've had friend crushes on that, I go on to have other feelings for, and people that I've had friend crushes on that I go on to become good friends with, and people that goes away, like any other sort of emotional feeling. But I do like that in some like Faramir, if we take away Faramir being like, "You're beautiful, let's get married," on the first instance,
I don't think he proposes to her on the first instance. That's a couple days. He waits a whole 5 days.
yeah.
He's taking it slow.
But, like, to be like, "You're beautiful, you'll ease my sorrow by being around me," on the first meeting, that's a little much, but then I do kinda
Mhm.
like that he's like, "Alright, I need to know more about her because she seems really cool.
Mhm.
Seems like my type, but let's check on that." And then they spend time together, and yeah, I'm sure there's a little trauma bond there, like you said. They've both lost immediate family members in this fight. They have both been subject to the black breath of the Nazgul,
Mhm.
and so they have these shared experiences like you were saying. And anyways, as they're sitting on the walls being cold, Faramir gives his mother's robe to Eowyn. And I will toss it back to you in just a moment, but I wanna mention briefly about Faramir's mother,
Mhm.
Findulias of Amroth. She is Prince Imrahil's sister. So Imrahil is Faramir's uncle, which I don't think we've had explicitly explained yet,
Oh, I didn't realize they were related. Okay.
and is not explicitly explained here in the text. But I latched onto the Amroth bit and I keep thinking about, like being like, who the fuck is Prince Imrahil? Because I've been needing to look that up for a little while. I did not remember any extra details about him. And so remembering that he is related to Faramir, that he's Faramir's uncle. Findulias was his sister. So he was Denethor's brother-in-law. That that's the connection there.
Mhm.
The other thing was Faramir and Eowyn waiting on the walls. Feels very election night, very watching the horrors unfold, not knowing whether things are going to go badly.
Mhm.
They get a happy ending, we get shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, did you have any commentary I mean, I'm sure you have commentary on the moment, but did you have commentary specifically on the robe?
Not really, just that it was extremely beautiful and it was a lovely gift. It's like the color of a summer night and covered in little jewel stars. It's very, very fancy. And just as I'm thinking about it now, thinking, okay, this belonged to his mother who died a while ago. When did he have time to get this out of storage? Who had to make it a priority, in between rebuilding walls and doing important practical shit to be like, hey, also, can you go find my mom's cloak? But maybe that was nice. Maybe that was a nice little break from all the war stuff. But what I immediately picked up on of, oh, they're gonna get married, is the commentary that she looked fair and queenly at his side. And I was like, oh, okay, this is gonna happen. All right, I'm here for it. And she does keep kind of softly rejecting him because he's saying stuff about her being beautiful. It was very much giving me the vibe of that super cheesy rom-com trope where you have two characters looking over a wall or looking at some sort of scenery and one of them goes like, beautiful, isn't it? But like they're really talking about the person and then the other person goes,
Mhm.
what? And they say, oh, nothing. It was that because he's doing that and she goes, come my friend. And then they go
Well, I
off somewhere. Mhm.
I was getting the vibes because she was like, "Is darkness coming?" and
Mhm.
draws closer to him.
Mhm. Oh, I miss
And
that.
I was like, this is the watch horror movies with me, I'll keep you safe, 3rd age
Oh,
edition.
yeah. And they are holding
Mhm.
hands,
Mhm.
and it is very cute.
Their hands met and clasped, though they did not know it.
Mhm.
And then they they said that they feel the tremor running through the earth, and that, of course, is the instant that the ring was destroyed. And so when Eowyn then asks, "Is darkness coming? Darkness unescapable?" And Faramir goes, uh, "In this hour, I do not believe that any darkness will endure." And he stooped and kissed her brow. And I wrote, so she's been friend zoning him this whole time. Now he's friend zoning her because we know it's his custom to kiss the homies.
True,
Um,
true, true. But then we get more just amazing visuals. So right after this moment, and so they stood on the walls of the city of Gondor, and a great wind rose and blew their hair, raven and golden, streamed out, mingling in the air. And the shadow departed, and the sun was unveiled, and light leaped forth, and the waters of the Anduin shone like silver. And in all the houses of the city, men sang for the joy that welled up in their hearts, from what source they could not tell. That's pretty fucking cool. That's pretty great.
and an eagle shows up with a song. "Sing now, ye people of the Tower of Anor, for the realm of Sauron is ended forever, and the Dark Tower is thrown down."
Hell yeah.
And there's a recording of Tolkien saying this somewhere.
Oh.
Out of the east there came a great eagle flying, and he bore tidings beyond hope from the lords of the west, crying, "Sing now, ye people of the Tower of Anor, for the realm of Sauron is ended forever, and the Dark Tower is thrown down."
There's actually a lot of recordings I found like last week, and I knew existed, and then was reminded of them recently, of Tolkien reading bits and pieces of these books. So unfortunately, can't necessarily go back and insert those into earlier episodes, but maybe when we do our like poetry bonus episode, we can insert some Tolkien reading some of his own poetry.
Oh, that would be fun.
Mhm. Throughout these chapters, we get sort of very quick little, there's paragraphs and paragraphs where we'll be going through like certain feelings, and then there'll be a single paragraph where it's like, "And days later, the days that followed were golden."
Mhm.
Tolkien is not spending time on the little things that don't matter. For all of his flowery descriptive language, he's being more or less economical about what he's spending that flowery descriptive language on.
Mhm.
Mary goes away to the fields of Cormallen, where we saw him in the previous chapter. And but also Aemir asked for Eowyn to join as well. But she stays with Faramir as he takes up the role of steward.
Mhm.
And Faramir asks her why. And she's like, I'm not really sure. And he's like, I do know, actually.
Yeah, well, he's got two kind of theories, both of which are kind of true. I guess two and a half theories. So it's either because of Aragorn, because she only answers to his military orders, or that she's in love with him, or that she wants to be near Faramir. And they have a long talk about how he's kind of calling her out about only wanting Aragorn for his power because she wanted to be lifted far above the mean things that crawl on the earth. And Aragorn is a great captain, but Faramir is also a great captain, and he thinks she's a badass and he wants to marry her. But and there's stuff there that we can talk about. But I enjoyed that. I feel like I called this way back when she and Aragorn first met. And they were
Hmm.
making eyes at each other. And I was saying, okay, like, fine, whatever. I see the heterosexual, the straight relationship happening here. But I really think that she wants his power. She wants to be him. She wants to have what he has. And
Hmm.
there's no romantic chemistry there. There is no reason for them to end up together. And he's hot, she has eyes, but I think that what he represents, and especially with what you were talking about with her wanting to be useful and serve her people and be important, that all makes a lot of sense.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. She also says this, and this is where we get the line, I wish to be loved by another, but I desire no man's pity.
Mhm.
And Aragorn pitied her,
Yeah.
and that hurt her. It was one thing to be relegated to the back and not be allowed to fight. It was another thing to be pitied for that.
Mhm.
Which is why now thinking back to those earlier lines, it's a little bit uncomfy that what drives Faramir initially to learn more about her is pity.
Yeah. But I mean, at least I guess we can give him credit for that may have been his initial impetus for his curiosity, but then he does genuinely get to know her in 5 days.
Mhm. This is true. Listen, they're doing a they're pulling a sapphic here, which is
Mhm.
they're having some very long dates, very close together, and then U-hauling
Yeah.
out
You
to Ithilien.
carting.
This is where Faramir sort of more or less proposes, asks her if she loves him, and says that he loves her and that he'd love her even if she was marrying Aragorn and going to be Queen of Gondor.
Mhm.
And did you have commentary on her response to this?
Yes. Yeah, this is the thing that really is complicated. So, this is what she says. She says, I stand in Minas Anor, the tower of the sun, she said, and behold, the shadow has departed. I will be a shield maiden no longer, nor vie with the great riders, nor take joy only in the songs of slaying. I will be a healer and love all things that grow and are not barren. And again she looked at Faramir. No longer do I desire to be a queen, she said. And so there, I don't really know where to start here. I think, especially comparing this to what we were saying about Frodo earlier and the significance of him not wanting a sword and what a powerful statement that would be of him putting aside, ending the cycle of violence that he participated in. On the one hand, I see that that's what's happening here. And this journey from perpetuating violence to finding some other outlet for that energy. Sure, sure. But Eowyn has no healing knowledge or experience or power. Like, Frodo, it makes sense because he only took up his role in battle out of necessity. It is sort of like this temporary noble sacrifice. But for Eowyn, being a warrior is such an important part of her identity. It feels really depressing to see her just be like domesticated so fast. And
Mhm.
sure, maybe you don't desire to be a queen. That also, like, I don't know, I kind of liked her political ambitions, but I think that there could be an alternate path for her where she still gets that resolution of accepting her role in a peaceful world. And I also think that could be really interesting for her to reckon with, going like, okay, like, what's my job? What's my purpose now? But there could be something of like, we don't need a standing army anymore, but I will still protect Gondor and I will use my skills in service to this peaceful world and making sure that people are safe. I'll do something like what Aragorn did, what in his Strider role, I'll be like a ranger. I will I will carry on the darker work so that everyone else can live in peace. There's so much that she could do, still maintaining her identity and carrying on her skills and applying them in a different way. And Faramir could be like, wow, I love my strong barbarian wife. That could be so cool. But that's not what happens. And it just feels weird. And they have a big dramatic kiss and everyone sees, and it's very cute. And obviously, I'm happy for them. But I have conflicting feelings about her response. So what do you
Yeah.
think?
So one of the things that I when I was reading this earlier, at the beginning of the chapter, the warden mentions sort of the warrior healer dichotomy
Mhm,
and how strange it is to him that Aragorn straddles both sides of that dichotomy,
mhm,
and how that is the mark of a king. And so I think in some ways, Eowyn is also trying to straddle both sides of that dichotomy while she's in love with Aragorn.
mhm,
And when she gives up that ambition and desire to be queen, she realizes that like she is but a mortal. She cannot do both.
mhm,
She has to choose one or the other, and so she chooses to give up the life of violence. Another way to read it too is that she now feels like she's actively got something to live for,
mhm.
and so chooses to not be a warrior anymore. Yeah, it was a little strange to me that she was giving up being a shield maiden as soon as she feels the love of a man that she can actually reciprocate.
Yeah, because if it was a conclusion that she had come to herself, if we had gotten some of her inner journey reflecting on her role in this new world and that process, that's really interesting. And I can see her arriving to that conclusion on her own and it making sense. But because of the way that it's framed and what we get in the story, that's, oh, it's because a man loves me and now I'll just stay at home and be a healer. That was disappointing to me.
Also, you had said the words, "My strong barbarian wife,"
Hmm.
which brings me to another point actually, where Faramir is saying, "We'll get married and we'll go across the river and make Ithilien beautiful, and with you there everything will grow with joy." And she says, first of all, she says, "Then must I leave my own people, man of Gondor?"
Hmm.
Which is the first thing that he doesn't answer.
Yes, he does not give her a straight answer on that, and I noticed.
But then also she says, "And would you have your proud folk say of you, 'There goes a lord who tamed a wild shield maiden of the north. Was there no woman of the race of Numenor to choose?'" So again, the idea of her giving up being a shield maiden as some form of like taming as some form of civilizing her and making her a real woman.
Mhm.
It implies an animalistic quality to her. There's some of the weird, like, racial thoughts to this because the men of Gondor are of the race of Numenor, and so they're supposedly inherently superior to other types of men.
Mhm.
And so her being like, "You're really stooping so low as to not marry a Numenorian here?
Mhm.
What will your people think? They'll think you're slumming it here."
Yeah.
Which is a valid concern, I suppose, that she has. Like, she doesn't wanna be thought of as other, as lesser than people she's supposedly going to be placed in a role above.
Mhm.
Just the idea that the people of Gondor will think of her still as other, despite the long history between Rohan and Gondor.
Yeah.
And I'm interested too in, I think canonically they have a long and happy relationship, but if what draws Faramir in is her sense of duty and, her being a fighter, a warrior, does that love, that infatuation remain when she gives that up?
Yeah. There's also a lot of talk about uses of the word barren and things growing and nurturing. So obviously it is very heavily implied that she's going to have children. And what the fuck is Eowyn going to be like as a mom? Will she be happy as mom? I don't know. And I think that she is a complicated.
She's nobility, she doesn't have to raise her own kids.
That's true. But I think she's a complicated and interesting person. And I wish that we got more of her. I'm sure that there are fanfics aplenty that explore this in depth, but I
Mhm.
I enjoy wrestling with the things that Eowyn implies by her existence.
We are giving more thought to the women characters than I think Tolkien ever did.
That's it's, unsurprising.
That may perhaps be because we are both women.
Yeah, that'd do it.
Anyway, the captains enter the city. More Iareth, please. I love Iareth. Because she shows back up.
Yeah, for those who may have forgotten. Yeah, she's the healer from before when
Mhm.
we were talking about the King's Foil.
Yes. She's she's giving a lesson to her country bumpkin, cousin that has shown up for the
Mhm.
arrival of the king, and it's so funny. She's just let's see. "The hands of the king are the hands of a healer," I said, "and that was how it was all discovered. And Mithrandir, he said to me, 'Iareth, men will long remember your words,' and—" But Iareth was not permitted to continue the instruction of her kinswoman from the country, for a single trumpet rang and a dead silence followed.
Amazing. So
And then,
good.
of course, she continues on the next page too. She's just constantly talking.
Yeah, she's just the comic relief.
Well, and she was doing this in the other chapter too, where she's just like constantly popping in with commentary. I love her.
Mhm. She's so great. And so the events that they're discussing, obviously Aragorn's showing up with his whole host, and it's very dramatic, and Faramir meets him in the middle of the field and officially surrenders his office, but Aragorn pulls an Uno reverse card and says that Faramir's office has not ended and it will belong to Faramir and his heirs forever. And basically, the position of the Steward of Gondor will always exist, and that will be together with the king, which I think is nice and lovely. And so I think that's a good kind of moral reward for Faramir being such a perfect steward. And because he relinquished his desire for that role, he's now free to take it without, all of the corruption that had plagued Denethor.
Mhm.
So they have their beautiful moment together, and Faramir asks for the people's approval to for Aragorn to come into the city and enter it as their king. And of course they all say yes, and it's amazing.
Well, and several episodes ago, we had that discussion about where does authority come from? What makes a monarchy legitimate?
Mhm.
And you'd mentioned, was it your old history teacher's take
Mhm.
that it derives from the consent of the governed?
Yes.
Which this is not perfect for that, but it does work. And Aragorn picks up the crown and says in Elvish, "Out of the great sea to Middle-earth I am come. In this place I will abide, and my heirs unto the ending of the world." But crucially does not put on the crown because he wants
Mhm.
Frodo and Gandalf to do it for him.
Yeah, by the labor and valor of many I have come into my inheritance. In token of this, I would have the ring bearer bring the crown to me and let Mithrandir set it upon my head. And it's extremely moving. This is a really nice, especially coming hot off the heels of the American election. It was really nice to go, yep, this is a peaceful transition of power. Obviously, we're not fans of monarchies in the real world, but in this world, this is what the people want. And everyone's happy with it. And it's beautiful. And he's recognizing all the people who brought him to this point. And it was just lovely. And I really enjoyed escaping into this chapter for a little while.
Down with monarchies.
Mhm. Also, if we want to go down on monarchs as long as they're Aragorn, that's fine.
As Aragorn, Prince Henry, from Red,
There's,
White, and Royal Blue.
of course. Did you have anything else about the coronation?
We flash forward a bit after the crown is placed on his head to learn that like dwarves and elves are going to come to Minas Tirith to work and frolic in the city, and it will become great and greater than it has ever been. He makes peace with the Easterlings and with Harad. He releases the slaves of Mordor. He does a lot of kingly shit.
Mhm.
And then Baragond.
Poor Baragond has to answer for his crimes. Why? Why is this important? I don't know, but this poor fucking guy, still, despite everything he did, he still gets fired from the guard and banished. Aragorn, bro. And I get he's appointed to the White Company to guard Faramir and whatever, but it just seemed, and this is presented as very merciful. But I was just like, really? Why can't you just let him live? That he has to move to a different city now. Why can't he just stay here?
Yeah. I mean, I read it ever so slightly differently, which was
Mhm.
that to an extent, the oath that he broke was a religious one.
Mhm.
He was essentially a paladin, and he chose to betray his lord in a way that probably would not allow him to continue working with anyone else that he had already worked with. He's clearly also being rewarded by being appointed the captain of the White Company
Mhm.
and Faramir's personal guard. But if he had stayed as guard of the Citadel, there were survivors of the guard of the Citadel who had worked with Baragond and also with the men that Baragond killed.
Yeah, that's a good
And
point.
so to be like, yeah, you're just going to go back to work and everyone's going to know you also killed all of your coworkers.
Mhm.
And yes, you were doing it to protect Faramir, but you had promised never to spill blood in the Citadel, and you had also promised to serve Denethor. And so what I'm telling you to do now is clearly in your protection of Faramir, that was a transfer of your oath. That was a you making a new oath without necessarily saying so. But now your job is to go and fulfill that new oath that you swore by spilling blood in this sacred place.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm now converted to seeing it your way.
I definitely see how reading it the way you initially read it makes total sense. And I am perhaps being a little more merciful. It is perhaps a little mean of Aragorn to be like, "So you fucked up and by the law, I should kill you, but also I'm the king, motherfucker. So
Mhm.
yeah. Anyway, but Baragond is half banished to Ithilien. It doesn't say that he can't ever return to Minas Tirith.
That's true. So I guess me saying that he was banished was not entirely charitable.
I think that's meant to be implied, but it's with that wording, a competent lawyer could make the argument that if he wants to come back and see some friends, he absolutely can do that. Or if Faramir comes back and he's traveling with Faramir, that's fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, Aragorn and Éomer talk about how much they love each other
Mhm.
and what will become of Theoden's body.
Yeah.
And it will remain here for now among the kings of Gondor until the Rohirrim can make a barrow and prepare Meduseld for its fallen king's return. And Éomer and Éowyn go back to Edoras to repair their own kingdom, but Éowyn promises Faramir she will come back.
Mhm.
Faramir is given the principality of Ithilien, and then everyone sort of goes on their way, and the Fellowship remains in Gondor for a little while.
Because Aragorn really does not want to see the fellowship dissolved. He has some reason, which he's being very cagey about beyond just the magic of friendship. He is saying, "A day draws near that I have looked for in all the years of my manhood, and when it comes, I would have my friends beside me. But of that day, he would say no more." And apparently, Bilbo, who is confirmed to still be alive, is also waiting for this day and knows what it is. And so this is just a fun short little mystery. And while everyone is wondering what the fuck is going on with that, Aragorn and Gandalf go on a special nighttime journey together, and it's very beautiful. And they like go up a mountain, and I know I'm cruising along here. Is there anything to interject?
No, that's basically what I had is
Yeah.
they find a sapling of the White Tree of Gondor, and Gandalf has this brief discussion with Aragorn where as they're hiking up Mount Mindolluin, which is the very large mountain that looms over Minas Tirith, he tells them that his time is over. The time of the elves is over. The time of the three rings of the elf kings is over. Now is the time of mortal men. And it is up to Aragorn to begin this new age and set down what will become the standard, what will become remembered from the past into the future.
Mhm.
What trappings of the past will be brought into the future? And one of those trappings is this sapling of the white tree, which they bring back to the city and place in place of the dead tree, which gets laid in the crypts as if it's a person.
I love that. As if it's a king specifically.
Mhm.
And I love that. I
Yes.
thought that was really nice. And also, it's so he's being so gentle with the little sapling. It's very careful because we know Tolkien loves trees. Very careful to note that the sapling was only very lightly rooted in the ground, and Aragorn just scooped it up super gently and didn't hurt the tree at all. And it was totally fine. And the tree had a nice time, which is really good. I'm glad. Oh, I wonder if the Ents will come visit it. Wouldn't that be nice? If they came and visited the baby tree. It would be
That'd be
like
fun.
a well, I guess not like a baby shower because it's already alive, but like a tree christening party and the Ents can show up. I'm gonna go write fanfic about that.
Yeah, and Gandalf is very careful to note that if the tree ever has fruit, the fruit must be planted up in this little valley too,
Mhm.
because it only seems to come to bloom when it's needed,
Yeah.
basically.
And this is the
And on
sign.
Midsummer Eve,
Mhm.
I saw the sign.
Yeah, this is the
Open
sign
it
that Aragorn
up.
was waiting for.
Yes, because on Midsummer Eve, Elrohir and Elladan and Glorfindel and Arestor and all the Rivendell elves and Galadriel and Celeborn and Elrond and Arwen come.
Yay!
And Arwen Evenstar, Arwen Undomiel, and Aragorn Elisar of the House of Telcontar are married.
Yeah. It was so nice. And I, being me, wanted a big, huge, elaborate description of their amazing royal wedding. We don't get that. We just get they're married. But I was still so happy because Aragorn wanted his friends with him for his wedding. It was so cute. And I love it. And you know that everyone got all dressed up and had special little outfits. And you know that the hobbits would have made sure that there was amazing food. And I bet Legolas and Gimli looked so sharp and so nice. And they probably danced a little bit and their heights are different and it was adorable. It's good shit. I was eating that up. I think I read that at like 7:15 this morning and I texted you in all caps about it.
You did. I was still asleep. I was at a wedding of some friends last night, which is why my voice is a little bit scratchy.
Mhm.
But yeah, so it's
It's
very,
so
very cute.
nice.
And that ends the chapter. So, do we have anything else we want to talk about with this section?
Not that I can think of. Just these were nice. They were nice chapters, and I appreciated that.
We're feeling joy again.
Yeah.
Well, my friends, thank you so much for listening. We'll wrap it here. And next time we will return with chapter 6, Many Partings. So, if you like what you are hearing, please subscribe to the podcast on your podcasting platform of choice if you have not already. You can listen to our entire backlog on our feed. You can, if you are enjoying it, leave us a 5-star review, either just the star review. We'd love if you would leave us a written review if the podcast platform you're listening on allows that sort of thing. You can follow us on our social media to see weird memes that we come up with when we're editing these. Random bullshit. If you scroll back far enough in our Insta, you can see Sawan Uwu. And, that is where any sort of, if we have any major announcements, particularly anything closer to the actual release dates of these, that's where that will go because we record these too far out to actually record any announcements with them. But thank you so much for listening. We love having you here. Our socials are at FanAppPod on all of the various platforms, mostly Instagram and Tumblr, but you can find us other places too. You can always send us an email at thefandomapprentice@gmail.com and catch us back here in 2 weeks with another episode. We're getting really close to the end of the books and it's going to be really emotional, but we'll make it work.
All right. See y'all next time.
See ya. The Phantom Apprentice is produced and edited by Rin and Sam. Our music was composed and performed by James, and our art is by Casey Turgeon. This podcast is created for non-commercial entertainment purposes, and the opinions expressed therein are our own and are not reflective of the opinions of any other person or organization. The content discussed is the property of the Tolkien estate and is used here under fair use.